In the 1880s, there was a passenger ship left England headed for North America. One of the passengers on that ship was a young boy named Ben Johnson. The ship was bound for the St. Lawrence River, and they got off in Quebec. Ben's first home in Canada was St. George's Orphanage in Ottawa. And that's where Grandpa, that I mentioned earlier, that's where Grandpa got Ben. He came to help Grandpa clear the farm up in Gatineau. Ben worked with Grandpa when he had work, but he worked for all the farmers around there. Tough life, because Ben was an Englishman, come to work with a bunch of people who couldn't stand Englishmen, Irishmen. They were starved out of Ireland. So Ben had a rough road to hoe. Sometimes he was referred to only as the immigrant. Didn't even deserve a name. But home was always at our place. Grandpa kept a home for him there. And eventually, of course, when Grandpa died, my dad had Ben with us then. I only remember Ben as an old man with Parkinson's disease. I loved to be around Ben. He had a curious habit. Sometimes he'd sit there and just kind of rock back and forth and hum songs. I loved when he could hear him. I'd sit close to his knee, look up into his kind old face, down at his gnarly old hands. I loved Ben. Eventually, of course, said Ben got it. One day, I was out in the yard with Uncle Pat, my brother Pat. We were playing, and Ben called me into the woodshed. He reached up on the shelf and handed me a stick of gum. I'd never seen gum before. And as I was unwrapping it, he said, "Now, Bobby, you don't swallow that, you just chew it." Well, I started chewing that gum. I couldn't imagine anything been so good. I chewed that gum for everything I had. Eventually, I went back out to where Pat was, and I gave it to him, and he chewed it for a while. And he agreed he'd never tasted anything so good. A couple of days after, I said to Ben, "Where did you get that gum?" "Oh," he said, "I got that," on that kind of funny grin on his face. He said, "I got that on that big spruce tree out there in the pasture." Pat and I went out a couple of days after, and we scraped, and nothing tasted like juicy fruit. I wrote a song. Ben is just a model for me. I'd follow him around. And the curious thing is, I think we all have a responsibility. Ben was leading his life actually finished. He was in bad shape. But he never noticed a 5-year-old boy traveling around behind him, noticing every step he made. And I think it's a lesson for us all, because we never know who's watching us. We can all be an influence without even knowing it. I wrote a song about Ben. I simply call it Ben. He was born around 1870. He never said exactly where. Some said Northern England or somewhere over there. We came to Grandpa's from the home when he was just a lad. He would work for all the farmers at whatever jobs they had. For over 60 years he worked, oft times for room and board. $1 maybe here or there was all they could afford. An orphan in a foreign land, if he was lonesome he kept it hid. But he would hum the little rosewood casket. I loved the way he did. He would fill his pipe and smoke his shag. Tobacco he wouldn't buy. He'd grow it in his garden and hang it up to dry. I remember him with failing eyes as he read his prayers at night. He would sit beside the coal oil lamp. He had almost lost his sight. Ben was my godfather. Oh, how it bothered me to see him use both shaking hands to hold a cup of tea. At night he'd sometimes sing old hymns. What a thrill for all us kids. But when he'd hum the little rosewood casket, I just loved the way he did. Then came the night I can't forget. Ben was sinking fast, pneumonia ravaging his lungs. They said he'd never last. Mother called us to his room. We knelt around his bed, and while she led us all in prayers, she whispered, Ben is dead. I cried alone up in my room. I hoped no one would see. And in the dark I thought about all Ben was to me. I remembered how he made me laugh with that stick of gum he hid, and how he'd hum the little rosewood casket. How I loved the way he did. Thank you, thank you.